subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 41. Capital turned upside down. Naturally, Jun Xie had no idea that the item within his hands was actually a heavenly-defying treasure. His mind was currently occupied with thoughts on how to explain himself if he were to return it to the Tang family. What reason can he give out to explain how this item fell into his hands? If he does not return it to the Tang family, then would it be of any benefit for him to leave it by his side? He does not even know exactly what this item was, and thus had no clue as to how much it was worth. After a long time, he was still unable to come up with anything. Then, he wrapped up the Xian core and placed it back into the cold jade box, and then into the golden silk sandalwood box. Weighing it in his hands, he placed it beside his pillow. After considering for a few more moments, he pushed it inside and covered it with his pillow. This was not to say that Jun Xie had recognized that this was a precious treasure and had wanted to keep a close eye on it. Rather, it was because he had once heard that the scent from the sandalwood is very beneficial towards sleep. Once there was a gentleman who bought a box but returned the pearls within it, a tale worth 1,000 laughters. Jun Xie's actions today, perhaps. It was already night time and the rain had finally began to stop. Grandfather Tang Wanli's gray hair was standing straight up, his fury rising to the skies. He had restrained himself as he charged towards the Li family and Meng family, intending to raise havoc for both. But when he reached the Li family, he instead suffered from a soft type of retaliation and was forced to leave. He then moved against the Meng family, raising havoc there, venting out the anger inside him, causing chickens to fly and dogs to jump. Unexpectedly, a heavy rain occurred once he arrived at the Meng family. Being unable to return caused Grandfather Tang to become even more provoked. In return, he threw an even bigger fit in the Meng family residence, cursing everyone to the point of choking on his or her own blood. How could he have imagined that as he was throwing a fit, someone from his residence would urgently rush here to report that something was stolen from his residence? At that moment, Grandfather Tang felt a blaring noise fill his head as all the blood in his body surged upwards to his brain. He came to vent his wrath upon others, but instead his own house was turned upside down by someone else. In addition, it even involved an inside job. There was no need to inquire what was stolen. Grandfather Tang knew that the item was certainly an important item that he personally valued. Otherwise, the messenger would never have rushed over through such a heavy rain to inform him. As for which personal valuable that was stolen, the most valuable could only be the Xian core. Although he had thought it through, Grandfather Tang tried holding on to the possibility that such was not the case and inquired about the stolen item. As long as it was not the Xian core, then everything would be fine. Unfortunately, what he feared the most had indeed come to pass. The stolen item was none other than the Xian core, which he valued as much as his own life. Grandfather Tang's vision became clouded by blackness and he almost fainted on the spot. Ever since the day he obtained it, Tang Wanli knew that he had managed to obtain a precious treasure. All that was required was for his younger generation to focus on Xian Qi cultivation and cultivate to the point of Earth Xian rank. After which, he would do everything in his power, even if it meant throwing his face into the gutters, to invite a few Sky Xian ranked experts, or perhaps even a Supreme Divine Xian ranked expert to help him out. With their help, the Xian core could be utilized to propel his younger generation into the Sky Xian rank. Once that happened, then as long as the Sky Xian ranked expert remained alive, the prosperity of the Tang family would also remain. As for himself, he was already too old. Even if he were to use the Xian core to increase his level of cultivation, he may not be able to live that much longer. Extension of longevity was only possible if he could achieve the supreme divine Xian rank. However, he simply does not possess that kind of talent, even with the help of this exceptionally rare treasure. How could he have expected the changes that would affect his plans? He had 2 sons. The first had no talent to speak of. The second was fairly capable but was more interested in literature and disliked martial arts cultivation. He stopped cultivating after reaching a mere 9th level Xian Qi, never bothering to even attempt breaking through into the silver level. Although his career as a government official had gone smoothly, there was no powerful expert within the family. This feeling where their family's future and well-being rested upon the hands of others was simply distasteful. The civil and military officials were naturally all under the governance of His Majesty, the Emperor. However, as long as their family have a Sky Xian expert, then even the Emperor must consider carefully if His Majesty wished to deal with them. Faced with no other options, Grandfather Tang could only place his hopes on his grandsons instead. This time around, his hopes seemed to be well worth it as a few of his grandsons had shown promising talent. With the exception of the eldest grandson, Tang Yuan, who preferred business to martial arts. His other 3 grandsons highly respected the value of Xian Qi cultivation and worked arduously in regards to Xian Qi cultivation. This allowed the old grandfather Tang to feel relieved. He believed that one of his grandsons would be able to step upon the Earth Xian rank within 10 years' time. As for himself, he was positive that he could continue on for another 10 more years. He believed that the positive effect of using the Xian core on his grandson would surpass the effect of using it on his son. As long as everything proceeded smoothly, Tang family would not face any problems in either the royal court or the outside for nearly 1 whole century. How could he have foreseen that after waiting for so many years, after enduring thousands of bitter hardships to gather the necessary herbs, after his grandsons had already succeeded in breaking through to the silver level, possibly requiring only a few more years before meeting the necessary requirements, the most critical item ended up being stolen? At this moment, Tang Yuan was in the middle of venting his own anger. Clutching 1.5 million worth in silver bills, he grabbed onto Meng Haizu's collar, insisting on redeeming the sword and accompaniment jade. How was Meng Haizu to produce them? All he could do was bow profusely and talked ingratiatingly, his face dripping with sweat. Feeling helpless at his own predicament, Grandfather Tang issued the command to return home. Feeling irritable and filled with only the thought of reaching home, he lashed out a kick at Tang Yuan, who was still ranting non-stop. Before leaving, Tang Yuan hollered at them. If they were unable to produce the precious sword and accompaniment jade in 3 days' time, then he would go forward and report it directly to His Majesty, the Emperor. Those words caused Meng Haizu to crap his pants. Of course, each word he said came at a price. For each word he said, Grandfather Tang gave him 2 vicious kicks, causing his buttocks to roll around. After hurrying home urgently, Grandfather Tang erupted with anger again. He had every one of the Tang family's elite house guards sent out, openly and wantonly searching all corners. As for those 16 men who were killed trying to escape from the Tang residence and the 6 corpses found on the streets, he had them well preserved. In addition to finding people to identify the bodies, he also had their images drawn out and handed over to the Ministry of Justice. Through the Ministry of Justice, he offered a reward of 100,000 silver liangs for any knowledge of these people. As for the few escaped servants from his own residence, the reward for them was double. No matter what, he must capture the mastermind. Within 1 day, the entire capital was turned upside down. In 3 days' time, the entire world was turned upside down. At the same time, Li Yuran and the Li family showed no external movements on their part, taking on the attitude of a watchful bystander. Secretly, however, they were moving with all their might. Li Yuan had everyone involved strictly interrogated, and anyone that showed hints of suspicious behavior were tortured endlessly in the most painful manner. Killing 1,000 innocents was better than letting go of one criminal. It was important for him to find out who was trying to go against him. After merely 2 days, many had found themselves unable to continue under the cruel tortures and died. The Li family's secret forces too moved out in full force, seeking information from all four corners. All the great families within the capital were able to catch the scent of something unusual within these series of events. All of them kept a close eye on the capital's movements, guarding themselves from being sucked into this muddy whirlpool. However, they too sent out their men to inquire information. What was going on in the Tang family? The entire capital's forces had at this moment started surging secretly. As for the holding cells of the Ministry of Justice, they were all suddenly filled to capacity. Tang family's blatant movement of its power and influence had caused an earthquake within the capital, causing everyone to feel insecure. And yet, no news were forthcoming. Grandfather Tang Wanli's heart was filled with worry and irritation, and threw a fit every day. Li Yuan maintained his gentle demeanor on the outside. However, veiled behind his chilling eyes was a pair of poisonous serpent-like glint. If his eyes were to lightly gaze upon someone, then that person would die. If his eyes were to stare heavily upon someone, that person's entire family would be exterminated. As for the person who had reaped the biggest benefit from this ordeal, Jun Xie, he remained unaware of what was happening. He was relaxing himself at home, holding on to the golden silk sandalwood box while he slept at night, sighing loudly to himself. It turned out that it really do great wonders for the sleep. In his mind, he kept wondering why his mind would wander towards his widowed sister-in-law. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 42. Hell. That was not to say that the intelligence of the Jun family was bad, but rather that the ones responsible for the Jun family's intelligence was used to not sending any news to the young master. Furthermore, this young master had indeed been quite busy for the past few days. If he was not busy trying to explore the secrets of the exquisite Hongjun pagoda, he was out supervising the training of the house guards. He even went to brew no small amount of wine, all of which were currently being placed aside for fermentation. As for the events that had transpired in the city, it was only after a few days did Jun Xie find out about it. Naturally, there was a reason why the Jun family was able to preserve its tranquility. Regardless of the Tang family or the Li family, neither one had given the Jun family any more than a suspicious glance. Disregarding their famed debauchee, the members of the Jun family were either too old, too crippled, or too prodigal. Who exactly could they send out? Grandpa Jun was an honorable man whose actions were done in broad daylight, a fact that even his enemies could not deny. Naturally, it could not have been him. As for Jun Moxie, hey! Even the act of suspecting Jun Moxie would be a huge disgrace for those 6 experts who died out in the streets. Who would believe that this debauchee could have the ability to kill off a silver level and 5 9th level Xian Qi expert? However, not everyone in the Jun family was unscathed. Thanks to the young master Jun having so much free time for the past few days, he decided to use the time to brutally put the house guards through a skin-rending training program. However, not a single one of them voiced out a complaint. The reason was very simple. They felt embarrassed. Simply too embarrassed. So much so that they could not open their mouths to do so. If each of the house guards had a layer of their skin rent, then Jun Xie had 3 layers of his own skin rent. Perhaps even more. During the past few days, Watching the training that Jun Xie put himself through caused even the iron-blooded Jun Wui to feel a chill run down his spine. His schedule for the day was, in the early dawn of the morning, Jun Xie woke up on time and went to the courtyard. There he found a secret corner for him to meditate. As for why he did not meditate in his room, he wanted a place that could connect him to the world, the nature. The fresh air brought by the early morning breeze was a gift of nature. An hour later, he strapped on weights to his body, legs, arms and wrists. After which, he began his training in a variety of basic moves. Normal punches, straight punches, hooks, uppercuts, normal kicks, front kicks, roundhouse kicks, side kicks, back kicks. No rest were allowed in between sessions. After the set was complete, he immediately moved on to push-ups, sit-ups, oblique sit-ups, duck walk, leapfrog, leg stretching, hanging upside down. After finishing this session, his body was at the point where no more sweat could come out. The muscles in his entire body were invigorated to the extreme. If this training was given to an ordinary person, even if that person was to persevere to the end, that person would end up being exhausted to the point of death. However, this was just the beginning. After having exercised both his hands and feet, it was finally time to start training in some set of martial arts movements, each performed meticulously. Even if these actions were simply practiced according to style without substance, it would still cause one to be drenched in sweat. After all, each was executed to adhere to a strict standard. Each punch involved each body parts from the toe and the heel. Then to the twisting ankles, the calf muscles, the hamstring, the thigh, and the waist. Each of them channeled the strength and momentum up towards the shoulder, which was then sent to the arm. The resulting punch was one executed with the strength of the entire body. Each punch was executed with all his strength. A martial arts clan once said, in training what was important was the simplest of punches and kicks. However, this simple punch and kick must involve all the muscles in the body for it to display its greatest level of strength. Some punches can take a person's life, but some punches end up causing the one who threw the punch to sprain their wrist. This was the main reason that could happen. This principle applied to other actions as well. Even if the action only involved a simple punch, it was also a form of martial arts. The basis of martial arts is the training of simple movements. The pinnacle of martial arts also follows the same principle, to become one with nature. This simple form of basic training is the best way of honing the mind of a martial artist. As for Jun Xie, he had his body and limbs strapped with weights, increasing the level of difficulty by tenfold. The amount of energy required exceeded even that. However, this difficult level of training was only the first day of Jun Xie's formal training. The fierce battle in the rain had given birth to the urgent desire to increase his strength. This body was simply too weak. After completing the entire morning training program, the Jun family house guards were all assembled before him. Thus began their bitter and hellish training. In addition, Jun Xie would participate in every set of training that he ordered out. He trained alongside them and finished it alongside them. These set of training were the ones from his past life, aimed at producing a super assassin, one that was comparable to a training from hell. Some would willingly jump into hell rather than endure this devilish form of training. Jun Xie's fellow martial brothers and sisters once spread out these words in secret: better to circle King Yama's palace 9 times, than to let the evil monarch be in charge of training. Evidently, Jun Xie's methods of training were simply monstrous. Jun Xie kept repeating to himself, if I wish to obtain a strength that is unmatchable in the world, then I must first have the tenacity and perseverance that is unmatchable in the world. Otherwise, I might as well forget about it. After which I must sweat and work harder than any other person. Otherwise, I might as well forget about it. It was only after these two had been done, can one be qualified to talk about opportunities. Without hard work, even if the opportunity was to present itself before one, that person will still not be able to grasp it. Hoping for gods to appear and lift oneself to become an immortal was an unrealistic fantasy. Even if one were gifted with the best luck in the world, holding on to the most powerful treasure in the universe, without hard work, that person would still amount to nothing in the end. If a beggar was to work hard, then he could leave behind a mark in history of a great general. A great general who does not work hard could also leave behind a mark in history, but that mark would be one of terrible losses and notoriety. In order to subdue others, and even the whole world, one must first be able to subdue themselves. This was the absolute minimal of conditions. After finishing the special training for himself, he had the house guards run 20 laps around the training ground. Jun Xie himself ran no less than them. The same goes for the other training sessions. With his current body state, Jun Xie ended up being last in each session, but in every training session, he obstinately persevered to the end. After finishing the first day of training, Jun Xie was exhausted beyond the realm of consciousness. However, the pride of the gold-ranked assassin and the dignity of the evil monarch supported him, allowing him to neither give up nor break down until the very end. Although this body had undergone the pulp-rending meridian cleanser process, Jun Xie wanted to train this body to the point of perfection as soon as possible. It was only after every muscle in his body had been coordinated accordingly can it be considered to have met Jun Xie's lowest level of requirements. But how could this be accomplished? Through sweat. For those who do not work hard, even if a divine fruit was to fall from the heavens unto them, they would only be crushed to death by this divine fruit. There would be no chance for them to even taste it. Currently, Jun Xie was in the possession of the exquisite Hongjun Pagoda and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. However, both martial arts and cultivation of this skill must be achieved simultaneously. If the body were not strong enough, then one would be destroyed even with the aid of a divine skill. The 300 house guards originally held a skeptical attitude towards Jun Xie's participation in their training. They believed that the young master was only doing it for fun. Seeing him stagger about to the point of collapsing right from the beginning, all of them chuckled in their hearts, convinced that he would not be able to endure for a long time. Some of them decided to start a bet, discussing about the rate and odds as they were perspiring and training. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 43. One must be strong to forge metal. Everyone believed that the young master would fall down at this moment or the next. How could their debauchee young master endure this type of hellish training? Some of them wagered that Jun Xie would simply give up within the time of an incense stick. However, contrary to all their expectations, Jun Xie, who was staggering unsteadily right from the beginning, endured all the way until it was time for breakfast, his body still staggering unsteadily. He actually persevered. This result caused everyone's eyes to pop out. Thus, they began speculating whether the young master will participate in the afternoon training. A vast majority of them believed that the amount of training endured had already exceeded the capacity of the third young master. For him to endure all the way until now was already a rare feat. After eating breakfast, there was only half an incense stick's time for them to rest. However, none of them realized that Jun Xie did not even consider resting. Not wanting to waste any time at all, he returned to his room as he put up with the pain coming from his entire body's aching muscles. producing several bamboo tubes fully pierced with steel needles. He placed them methodically on the table. He then produced one bamboo tube without any steel needles on it and placed it within the formation of the preceding bamboo tubes. There was only the length of a palm's thickness in between each of the bamboo tubes with steel needles. And Jun Xie wanted to hit the bamboo tube within the formation using his fingers without touching the tubes on either sides of this palm. In addition, the requirement was that his palms must pass through 3 bamboo tubes before hitting the final tube, with the strike making a sound. This little training was targeted at training the flexibility of the fingers to the extreme. This training seemed simple, but was in fact very difficult. The needles were everywhere, causing any over or under usage of strength or failure in flexibility to result in the hand being pierced by the steel needles. That moment of pain would cause anyone's hand to shake, which would in return cause even more needles to pierce the hand. Jun Xie maintained an indifferent face as he calmly inserted his hands, which had undergone an intense session of morning training into it. When afternoon training began, the house guards found Jun Xie standing on the training grounds, his fingers swollen and dripping with blood, but his face seemed better. In the following afternoon training session, he continued to persevere as he staggered unsteadily onwards until the end. This result caused every one of the house guards' eyes to fall to the ground. Nonetheless, half of them still believed that this high level of training was already far beyond what the third young master could endure. For him to endure all the way up to now was something highly commendable. He would not be able to continue on until late afternoon, would he? However, in the late afternoon, he remained. At this moment, all the guards were incited as their hearts roared, how could we, veterans of war who had endured countless training and battles, lose to a tender-bodied, pampered young master who could not suffer bitterness at all? This perspective caused these men who were standing on the edge of hell to step directly into it. As long as Jun Xie did not stop, all the house guards would grit their teeth and endure to the end. As a result, everyone ended up being too fatigued. Since Jun Xie was directing the training, it was only natural that Jun Wui was present as well. After having incited everyone's morale to such heights, how exactly did he intend to train them? This was something that piqued Jun Wui's curiosity. However, after witnessing the contents of the training sessions, Jun Wui felt a cold chill course violently through his spine. Observing the guards carrying a huge, rough and unprocessed log running through the grounds without any leeway in between, Jun Wui's eyes stared widely. Then, he spotted Jun Xie amongst them, carrying the same type of log as he ran. Jun Wui could not help but fiercely rubbed his eyes before looking again. Then he rubbed his eyes again. In the end, he rubbed it until his eyelids suffered from pain as well. If there was nothing wrong with his eyes, then the sun must have risen from the north today. How is this possible? Is this still my debauchee nephew? This is simply beyond ordinary. After the day was over, Jun Xie finally ended the training. Those highly capable and sturdy house guards were all exhausted, akin to a dead dog. Each of them laid paralyzed on the ground like a piece of mud, their mouths wide open as they gasped for breath. Amongst the 300 men, not a single one still possessed the strength to stand. As for the 2 company leaders, one was bent as he gasped violently for breath. The other was straining, kneading his own waist. Jun Xie's face was pale white, his body seemingly about to fall, but he remained standing straight. With a sharp gaze, he observed the chaotic state of the 300 men and suddenly shouted out, "Get your ass off the ground and stand up. In 3 breaths' time, those who cannot stand up will be eliminated. Bring your worthless body out of here and commit suicide." That is because you are not qualified to stand here. If you cannot even compare with this prodigal debauchee, what reason do you have to continue living? Immediately, everyone bounced up like a spring. They gritted their teeth as they staggered unsteadily. A few of them were almost unable to maintain themselves and were about to fall, but was propped up by those around them. If they were to lose to the third young master, then they would really have no face to continue living. Jun Xie panted as he stared at them with a cold gaze. As of now, who among you can still claim that you are not trash? Ha! With just 1 day's worth of training, all of you have fallen to such a sorry state. Even though I am but a debauchee, I can still stand. But you? Do you all have the state of mind to lie down peacefully? Do none of you feel shame? A veteran of 100 battles? Hey! All 300 warriors had their faces etched with bitter shame. One by one, they all lowered their gaze to the ground. If this young master that everyone had constantly looked down upon can persevere and still stand to boot, then what reason could they have to lie down? Jun Xie's participation in the day's training was something witnessed by all of them. All of them felt their body aching and exhausted after the day's training. But how did Jun Xie manage to endure it? Everyone knew that in order for the third young master whose body was weaker than theirs to endure today's training, the difficulty involved would be far harder. Everyone gazed at Jun Xie, their eyes involuntarily filled with some degree of awe and respect. Because what Jun Xie did today was done without the slightest foundation. On the other hand, they were a group of well-trained men. Jun Xie gave them all a cold look before turning around and walking off, leaving only one sentence. If this is to happen again tomorrow, then all 300 of you can scram. The Jun family does not waste its money of trash, especially when they cannot compare with a debauchee. Watching Jun Xie's back as he left, anyone who paid attention could see that his legs and all the muscles on his body was trembling uncontrollably. This was the uncontrollable sign that could appear only when someone had been exhausted to their very limits. However, Jun Xie's face did not show the slightest bit of his current condition. In terms of endurance alone, no one there could compare with him. If their debauchee young master could endure this tough level of training, then could these veterans of 100 battles say otherwise? Especially since their debauchee young master had undergone the same degree of training as them. Would they be able to speak the words difficult? What a loss of face that would be. If they were to say those words, then the best case scenario would be to be looked down on with contempt by their comrades. But if they ended up being looked down on with contempt by the debauchee young master, then they should seriously just go commit suicide. What would they do then, if they were to find out that there were 8 weights strapped onto Jun Xie's body? Would they become too embarrassed to live? None of them knew that at least a dozen spots on Jun Xie's body suffered from torn skin due to the weights. Blood oozed out slowly from the wounds. The training that Jun Xie underwent was estimated to be at least 3 times more intense compared to the house guards. This was a terrifying figure. If not for the art of unlocking heaven's fortune supporting him, Jun Xie with the body of the original Jun Moxie would have died from overexhaustion 10 times over. However, the reason Jun Xie acted as such was to pull out the divine powers of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. With a training program, which transcended life and death, he would then break through the limitations of his body. Although Jun Wui had no idea that Jun Xie was practicing with weights attached to his body, Jun Xie's performance today had moved this man who was once a great general who oversaw tens of thousands of soldiers. Watching Jun Xie's departing silhouette, Jun Wui felt greatly pleased. However, a suspicion remained within his heart. Could this be his true face? This is simply being too hard on yourself. Would any accident happen if this continues? One must be strong to forge metal. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 44. Another step. Jun Xie walked steadily back to his room. When little Ku saw Jun Xie's current state, she nearly burst into tears. With trembling hands, she took off his clothes for him and carefully cleaned him with clear water. All the while, Jun Xie remained standing. Based on the amount of exhaustion he had to endure, he knew that if he were to lose his balance and fall, then he would instantly fall unconscious. However, as long as he was able to get past this hurdle of restoring his body's strength while maintaining his consciousness, then he would have succeeded in exceeding one of the limitations of his body. After little Ku finished cleaning his body, he had her move away while he continued standing, delving deep into himself. Through his spiritual awareness, he observed as the energy channels of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune began to sluggishly awaken. To Jun Xie's surprise, he found that the seven-colored exquisite pagoda within his sea of consciousness was rotating at a higher speed compared to the past. In addition, the white worldly spiritual qi exuded by it was also much thicker compared to before. The spiritual qi slowly entered Jun Xie's meridians, flowing along the pathways. Each time the spiritual qi reached an area, it would give Jun Xie a cool and comfortable feeling. This feeling was akin to a person who was thirsty to the utmost limit who suddenly found cool springs in the mountain. This feeling was simply indescribable. The misty spiritual qi continued entering Jun Xie's meridians at a higher rate. Jun Xie's body, which was tired to the extreme, began to slowly rejuvenate itself, and at the same time, his entire body gradually became itchy. This was especially so for the injured areas where the itch was extremely unbearable. Jun Xie exerted strict control over the desire to scratch the itchy areas. Directing the full concentration of his mind to enter a state of meditation. Slowly, he entered a state of disconnection from self and others. As time passed, all the injured areas of Jun Xie's body began to discharge a clear sheen of fluid, which gradually coagulated, forming into scars. Bit by bit, the scars on Jun Xie's body began to wrinkle up before hardening. In the end, it turned into powdery crumbs as it fell down. A thin layer of skin fragments progressively accumulated around Jun Xie's feet. As for the skin on his body, it had returned to its former white smoothness. The only difference was that it had become more flexible. On the other hand, his tensed muscles that had undergone one whole day's worth of high-grade exercise unconsciously exuded a crystal-clear watery glow while quivering lightly. After the quivering ended, the muscles slowly loosened down as it was restored to its former relaxed state before undergoing the training. Next, a wave of unbearably tingling itch washed over him before finally relaxing down. Jun Xie, who had entered a state of meditation, did not realize what was happening at all. After having overcome the extreme state of exhaustion, the feeling that followed was a serene feeling of relaxation. His spirit felt as though it had stepped upon an ethereal realm. This feeling was akin to the comfortable feelings of a person who was traveling in a tour through the vast ocean, enjoying the gentle billowing waves of the seas as it slowly surged forth. Within his sea of consciousness, the mist exuded by the colorful exquisite pagoda became denser and richer. Waves of pure worldly spiritual qi flowed like water through Jun Xie's body, coursing through his every meridian, his every muscle fiber, his every tendon. Jun Xie could clearly feel that the fine flow of qi within his meridians was slowly growing bigger after having received nourishment from the waves of the spiritual qi. Even though the degree of growth was not great, it was still growing non-stop. In addition, his sense of thought seemed to have become ethereal in nature, no longer able to feel exhausted. At this moment, His spiritual essence seemed to have merged harmoniously with the little pagoda within his sea of consciousness. Even though Jun Xie was a man with the nerves of steel, this profound feeling of comfort caused him to feel intoxicated. Suddenly, the colorful Hongjun pagoda stopped spinning, no longer radiating as brilliantly as it just had. This event startled Jun Xie's awareness within his sea of consciousness, and he began to awaken from the ethereal realm. Even his spirit was instantly returned back to the mortal world. As for the misty white spiritual qi flowing within his meridians, it retreated back like the receding tide. Jun Xie could feel that this whole body was filled to the brim with strength. Slowly, he opened his eyes, which revealed a sharp gaze filled with a divine glow. Jun Xie gently flexed his body, causing the joints throughout his body release popping sounds. Instantly, his body returned to its ideal and smooth state, while his state of mind was also surprisingly in an excellent state. As the soft moonlight gently spilled down, Jun Xie moved towards the windows. The moon hung in the sky like a plate. The surrounding clear blue skies spread out for thousands of li. The Mid-Autumn Festival has arrived. In his original world, the Mid-Autumn Festival would be held on the 15th of August. But here, there was only the Autumn Festival held on the 20th of August. No matter which world he was in, the moonlight remained as gentle as water, spreading its splendor everywhere. Jun Xie sighed lightly, surprised to find that his heart was no longer filled with the emotions of lonely solitude. It was as though, somewhere along the way, his heart had become accustomed to it. The moon remained the same moon. The sky remained the same sky. Since the skies were the same skies, then he may as well just assume that this was a change in working environment. Jun Xie carefully rechecked his body and discovered that the injuries of the day had all been healed. Those injuries, which cannot be considered light, were all completely healed. In addition, even the scars had miraculously disappeared within the span of one night, his skin smooth yet flexible. Jun Xie could not help but stare at the result. I never expected that the restoration capabilities of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune would turn out to be so powerful. Originally, Jun Xie had thought that after undergoing the brutal training, his body would become the bronze skin of his past life. Unexpectedly, even though the quality of his body had obviously been upgraded at a rapid rate, his skin had instead become smoother. Disappointment. Thankfully, the transformation of his skin was towards the nature of flexibility. If his skin had instead become softer, then he would have no face to go out. Jun Xie rechanneled the art within his body and was suddenly overjoyed. After the day's insane level of training and the exercise of the arts in the evening, the effect obtained was extremely significant. The silky flow of qi within his body had grown at least double in size. If the original size of the flow of qi were comparable to a strand of hair, then the current size would be comparable to a strand of coarse mane on a pig. Jun Xie suddenly broke out in cold sweat. To say such a thing about himself, perhaps he was being overly masochistic on himself. In addition, the speed of the qi flow had also increased. There was a sudden clarity within him. His cultivation of the first level of art of unlocking heaven's fortune had taken a huge step forward. To his great surprise, Jun Xie also found out that he could now access the inner eye. This was something that only martial artists that had attained the pre-celestial stage could accomplish. This art of unlocking heaven's fortune was indeed a miraculous skill. Even though his current strength was far from the standards of the pre-celestial stage, he was already able to access the inner eye. It seemed that this limit-breaking training, where the entire body's physical energies were squeezed out to the extreme followed by the channeling of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, had produced some unexpected benefits. Checking his meridians, Jun Xie finally understood the mysterious aspect of the Xian Qi within this world. The so-called Xian Qi cultivation was, in fact, not much different when compared to the practice of internal strength. It could be considered as a special branch of internal strength cultivation. Xian Qi does not last as long as internal strength. In return, it possessed an explosive power that far surpassed internal strength. It was also due to the odd explosive power that the secretive nature of this mystical force became inadequate. Naturally, the endurance of the explosive power was even more inadequate. The higher a person's cultivation in Xian Qi, the external signs would become more significant. This was the main cause of the different glow of radiant colors from different Xian Qi levels. The method of cultivating Xian Qi was almost the same as the practice of internal strength, which was to channel energy through a fixed set of meridian pathways. For example, there is one meridian line for the cultivation of the 9th level and below. Regardless of whether it is the 8 extraordinary vessels or the 12 standard meridians, there is only one path to follow, forming towards a channel, interconnecting through the inner cycle. When they have broken through to the silver level, they can then open up another channel. That way, it would be possible to increase the flow of energy. However, the cycle of the flow remained within the same confines. The only difference would be that the limits have been increased greatly. This may be due to the fact that the people in this world possessed a unique body. It was no wonder that every breakthrough in Xian Qi cultivation would be accompanied by extreme pain, comparable to the molting process of a snake. It was a process where the cultivator would forcibly open up a meridian pathway. How could that not hurt? The later stages would follow the same steps. Once all the 12 standard meridians and half of the 8 extraordinary vessels were open, then the cultivator would have successfully stepped upon the realm of supreme divine Xian. There was, however, another requirement. Amongst the opened-up vessels of the 8 extraordinary vessels, 2 vessels were to be interlinked. Only after having accomplished this would one be considered to have achieved a genuine supreme divine Xian rank. If a cultivator was able to open up 4 of the 8 extraordinary vessels but were not able to assign 2 of them to become interlinked, then that person could only be considered a false supreme divine Xian ranked expert. There was one aspect which surprised Jun Xie. In the process of attaining the supreme divine Xian rank, one must open up all the 12 standard meridians that will serve as the main route of practice in Xian Qi cultivation. The dantian served as the depository area for Xian Qi. As for opening 4 out of the 8 extraordinary vessels, the most difficult part was only the interlinking of 2 assigned vessels, after which one would successfully become the highest existence within this world. However, if one were to analyze this using the knowledge of martial arts, even though the highest achievement was the supreme divine Xian, 4 vessels remained closed within their bodies. In that case, could there be an even higher existence compared to the supreme divine Xian? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 45. Meeting Tang Yuan again. Could there be an even higher existence than the supreme divine Xian? From the perspective of internal strength cultivation, the answer to this question was a resounding yes. There must be a higher existence. However, this was a different world. Even though the cultivation of both internal strength and Xian Qi shared the same path, the result may not necessarily be similar. It was possible that the rules in this world were different and that supreme divine Xian was the limit in Xian Qi cultivation. With Jun Xie's current level of understanding towards Xian Qi, he was unable to come up with a conclusive answer. In addition, after having undergone the pulp-rending meridian cleanser, all the meridians in Jun Xie's body had been completely opened. It had already achieved the realm of 100 interlinked vessels of a pre-celestial stage expert. In terms of the meridian quality alone, it was now far superior to those within the supreme divine Xian realm. In terms of true strength, however, his was still far from being able to fight against one. After all, it had only been 1 month since he transmigrated to this world. To be able to transform a waste-like body into his current level was already an unimaginably speedy feat. This was one of the wondrous powers of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. If one were to practice any other cultivation skill, 1 month may not even be enough for one to attain the beginner stages. Moreover, the exquisite Hongjun Pagoda was able to act in concert with the art of unlocking heaven's fortune and open up all the meridians in Jun Xie's body. This was tantamount to opening up countless treasure trove that had no limits in space, just waiting for Jun Xie to fill them up one by one. With Jun Xie's current level of strength, not even an ordinary silver-leveled Xian Qi expert could deal with him, even in a fight to the death. However, the result would be very different if this was an assassination scenario. After all, assassinations were what Jun Xie did for a living. However, the fully opened meridians also gave Jun Xie access to a peculiar ability. While not exactly a true form of imitation, as long as he could analyze a certain Xian Qi skill cultivation formula, he would be able to imitate the forms taught by the formula. Naturally, he would only be able to imitate the form and not the strength of the formula. Thinking about this, Jun Xie could not help himself and smiled. It seems that I now have another method of deception. The next day, Jun Xie appeared yet again in the training ground, causing everyone to become shocked. Yesterday's training was one that gave these house guards' body no small amount of suffering. Even now, many areas on their body were aching miserably to the point of death. And yet, this young master had actually arrived earlier at the training grounds than them. After yesterday's training was over, almost every one of them found themselves looking at their third young master in a different light. Even their hearts were filled with respect for him. But all of them were convinced that their third young master would not be present tomorrow. Whether he possessed the will to do so was not the question in hand. The question was, how could his tiny physique handle it? Unexpectedly, they would arrive to see Jun Xie standing upright with a sword-like gaze on his face. Everyone felt as though they were caught in an illusion. Is this still the useless, waiting for death's call, freeloading third young master? How did he manage to climb out of bed? Jun Wui had long since arrived at the training grounds. Sitting on his wheelchair, he observed everything that was happening. Although he had already expected Jun Xie to appear, he was still surprised. Jun Xie's serious condition after finishing yesterday's training was something he understood very well. With Jun Xie's original body capacity, there was no way he could endure that kind of burden. That was why Jun Wui felt that it would be understandable even if Jun Xie did not appear today. In Jun Wui's opinion, even if Jun Xie managed to make an appearance, Jun Xie would be in a state of exhaustion to the point of being unsightly. Yesterday's training was something that Jun Wui would not be able to easily finish even with a complete body. He never would have expected that Jun Xie would appear in a state which was superior to the warriors before him. Could it be that yesterday's training was not as heavy as I imagined? Once again, another high-intensity training began. To their surprise, the guards found that Jun Xie's speed today was far superior compared to yesterday. Although some of his paces were not good, it was no longer unsteady and had become more decent compared to yesterday. The surprise did not end here. In the following days of training, Jun Xie began catching up to the speed of the house guards. Eventually, he was even able to surpass some of them. This occurrence caused no small number of the house guards' eyes to turn red. This rapid rate of increment in body strength was something they had never seen before. In fact, they had never even heard of such a thing before. But their young master was currently turning a myth into reality right before their very eyes. The young master's body is soft and tender while ours is rough and tough. If the young master can do it, why can't we? This question had once again set fire to their soldier hearts. Everyone's thirst for power caused the training sessions to enter a new level of intensity. Almost every one of them had their eyes blaze red as they gritted their teeth and trained like a wild beast with their life on the line. None of them was able to realize that even while training, Jun Xie had 8 considerably heavy weights strapped onto his body. In addition, he underwent a special training of his own before joining them to train in the morning. Moreover, Jun Xie also increased the aspects of his special training: climbing, stone grasping, level movement, arm control, stealth. Jun Xie had each of the 12 long hours of a day carefully divided, not wasting even a single minute. On the 3rd day, Grandpa Jun received the news about Jun Xie's training and had secretly came over to observe. Grandpa Jun was pleased to know that his grandson was so motivated, but was also worried that Jun Xie was training too frequently, causing haste to make waste. But after seeing Jun Xie training that one time, Grandpa Jun never showed up again. He simply walked away silently and calmly. The housekeeper, old Tang, was able to clearly feel that Grandpa Jun was very happy, very moved. When there was no one around, Grandpa Jun hummed 2 little tunes to himself in his study. He even became drunk for the first time. Becoming a drunken mess, his face was instead filled with joy. After that, he walked off, staggering unsteadily towards the room with the memorial tablet of his deceased wife. There, he mumbled for the whole night. On the 2nd day, he came out with a grin, several tears remaining in the corner of his eyes. On the day before the autumn festival, Tianxiang City had already begun to liven up. Everyone was dressed up, and every corner was decorated in multitudinous colors. Everyone who was away from home had returned to celebrate the annual reunion. It would be difficult for it to not be lively. In mid-afternoon, within the highest floor of the drunken immortal establishment, a group of bodyguards were seated together in 2 tables. There was another table between the 2 tables, where only 2 people were seated. These 2 were naturally Jun Xie and Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan, who was seated opposite Jun Xie, constantly sighed, his brows knitted up into a scowl. For the past few days, Fatty Tang could be considered to have suffered greatly. Grandfather Tang Wanli had almost ripped out the fat off the body of this grandson of his. Firstly, he was grounded, no longer able to take even 1 step out of the residence. After which, whenever Grandfather Tang recalled the incident of the Xian core being stolen, he would have someone summon Tang Yuan over. Thus began a round of feet-jumping cursing from Grandfather Tang to the fatty. Next, he would slap Tang Yuan a few times to vent his anger before telling him to scram. This situation would occur more than 3 times a day. Simply put, whenever Grandfather Tang recalled the incident would be whenever Tang Yuan had to go over. In this case, Tang Yuan had originally lost a great deal of face. He nearly lost his fiancée, causing his future father-in-law to give a good scolding. His fiancée, on the other hand, was in tears. Threatening to kill herself, she insisted on breaking off their engagement. There was no helping it. If it had nearly occurred today, then who was to say it would not successfully happen tomorrow? When that happened, what then could she do? Whenever his father saw him, the first thing he would do was slap him in the face. After that, he would go look for a beating stick. Even though his mother wanted to restrain his father, she was too fearful to do so. His knitted forehead has no chance to become smooth at all. Whenever his little brothers met him, they would ask him, "Big brother, when will you go to the 1,000 gold hall again? Please allow us to bask in your glory as well." After saying that, they would burst out in laughter. However, the most painful matter was that each time grandfather Tang scolded him, he would be forced to kneel down on an abacus. For this matter, a special iron abacus was made. Why? Don't ask silly questions. Considering how heavy Fatty Tang was, normal abacuses would have broken down every time he kneeled on them. Abacuses do not grow on trees. You know. After these few days, even the specially made iron abacus had become bent. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 46. Beating around the bush. Thankfully, Fatty Tang has nerves of steel, a big heart, fat body, and most importantly, an optimistic attitude to life. Even after having suffered sessions after sessions of scolding and beatings, becoming subject of gossip to the point of wanting to commit suicide, as long as he returned to his own room and took a nap, he would clear it out of his system, considering it to all be a thing of the past. If this was a depression-prone person, then the rope would already be hanging taut from the ceiling and the person would already be reincarnated a number of times. Although, this so-called optimistic attitude to life, big heart, nerves of steel was but a better way of putting it. A harsher way of putting it, he was simply a thick-faced, shameless person. Finally, this fatty was able to use the coming autumn festival as an excuse to slip away from his house. The first thing he did after escaping was to come complain to Jun Xie. Coincidentally, Jun Xie was busy pondering what it was that he had obtained. For Fatty Tang to come, they both hit it off, heading to the drunken immortal establishment for some drinks. Fatty Tang drank a cup of wine, then gave out 3 sighs. Then, he stretched out his radish-like index finger to the skies and let out a mouthful of curses as he vented his anger. Drinking another cup, he repeated, again and again, such violent intensity, such vicious deep-seated hatred. The resentment he discharged was tantamount to old woman widowed for life. All the guests on the upper floor frowned. Even the bodyguards on the side tilted their heads, acting as though they do not know him, to have to accompany this kind of young master out. This is simply humiliating. The young master Jun himself rolled his eyes. Even though he possessed a calm temperament, the one that the fatty was cursing included himself. And yet, he had to sit here and pretend that he did not know anything, being unable to do anything else. How can he not roll his eyes? I say, fatty, what exactly was stolen from your home? With you cursing out with such bitterness, I no longer have the mood to drink anymore. Jun Xie looked at the cup of wine before him. He really could not stomach it. Being cursed at was one thing. After all, with his calm temperament, something like that could be brushed off easily. The wine, on the other hand, was made so that its fragrance would assail one's nose, and yet tasted like water. Drinking it does not make one feel tipsy in the slightest, and it tasted just like rice water. If Jun Xie were to give his evaluation on this wine is just like a woman whose body is even fatter than Tang Yuan, who applied a whole bottle of inferior and expired perfume on her whole body. Having drunk this wine, Jun Xie could not help but recall old Song's wine from the night of the heavy rain. Jun Xie now felt a longing for the wine that he had once contemptuously considered as trash. This was the so-called the dead should compared with other dead person. The living should be compared with other living person. The wine was something hard for Jun Xie to swallow and could not hold a candle to the top-grade wines of his past life. But now, he finally understood. The man's words back then of how this wine was a rare wine in this capital city and were sold in limited numbers was actually the truth. Jun Xie suddenly recalled that he had brewed some wine. After having placed them aside for the fermentation to take place, he totally forgot about them. Counting the days. Oh, I should be able to take them out in a few days' time. I should quickly get this wine done. Even if it is not for the sake of making money. At least I should do it for my own sake. If I have to keep drinking this kind of swill, how am I supposed to live? Once I take the wine out from fermentation, I too will sell in limited numbers. Son of a b****tch. 10,000 silver liangs per jug. Love it or leave it. If you don't want to buy, then just leave. I will drink it all myself. If I cannot finish it, then I will just feed it to the pigs. Son of a b****tch. Just saying it feels unbearable. He thought viciously to himself while smelling the cup of garbage wine. With his heretical temperament, feeding it to the pigs was not a far-fetched possibility. Sigh. Tang Yuan paused. His fat, chubby face, comparable to a poached egg, was etched with a twisted expression. Third young master. Brother, I am really having a miserable time. Those ***stards. Could they not have brought this calamity onto others? Why did it have to be me? D***mn their 18 generations of ancestors. This senior will wipe them out forever. And then there are the damned thieves. They were the ones who stole the items. Why is my grandfather singling me out? I curse them, this senior cursed them to be crippled forever. The more he said, the more agitated he became. Tang Yuan stood up in agitation, slamming his leg down, bringing a raging wave of fat down upon the chair he was seated upon. The slabs of fat on his body surged magnificently as he roared fiercely towards the skies. Thankfully, the chairs in the drunken immortal establishment were quite decent and were able to withstand the full weight of this fatty. Jun Xie was about to lose himself. He propped his palm onto his face, feeling a desire to just run out. Being together with this fatty was simply too humiliating. The entirety of the third floor of the drunken immortal establishment suddenly became deathly silent. Everyone turned their heads, observing the pile of fat trembling in agitation. Panting, Tang Yuan removed his leg from the chair, sat back down without wiping it, and started to violently drink again. Third young master. The item that my family lost this time is something extraordinary. Tang Yuan twisted his face. Due to this item, my life was a living hell for the last 5 days. My old man gave me at least 10+ times worth of beatings. My grandfather fiercely beat me with a big stick even as he was chasing me. Look at me, do you think I can run fast? Brother, look at me. I am now as slim as a horse. Tang Yuan sadly measured his body as he sat on the chair. His soft belly fat fell down, covering his knees. Heir, you have indeed lost a lot of weight. Jun Xie spoke against his conscience, and then added. Seeing you lose so much weight, your face have no wrinkles at all. Tang Yuan let out a "Pay." He had originally wanted to ignite Jun Xie's curiosity, but instead Jun Xie chose not to continue asking about it at all. Nonetheless, this matter had brought so much misery onto Tang Yuan. It was only natural that he would have the desire to talk about it. Otherwise, why would he drag Jun Xie out here? Third young master. That item is a xian core. A xian core. Tang Yuan moved close to Jun Xie and whispered into his ear. In addition, it is a xian core from a peak 9th level xian beast. That is simply a heavenly defying treasure. So, it is just a xian core. And here I thought it was something incredible. A xian core from a peak 9th leveled xian beast? Jun Xie's heart jumped, but he turned his face away dismissively. What is so extraordinary about that toy? I too have one. You think this is the same as those 5th and 6th level crap? You dare take your little toy and compare it with my family's? Tang Yuan snorted. Let me enlighten you. That thing in my home is a pinnacle grade 9th level Xian core. If this information is to be leaked out, I fear that the whole world would quake as a result. If an Earth Xian ranked expert were to utilize a 9th level Xian core, that person would be propelled from the beginner stage of Earth Xian up to the peak stage of Sky Xian. If a Sky Xian ranked expert of the middle stage was to utilize it, then that person would be able to charge all the way into the realm of Supreme Divine Xian. Third Young Master. A Supreme Divine Xian. The number of such experts could easily be counted. Tang Yuan moved his short, fat hands in an exaggerated embracing posture, signifying the world. It has such a potent effect? Jun Xie's heart was somewhat pounding, but he looked at Tang Yuan with a face filled with suspicion. You dare boast so heavily in front of me? If it truly has such a potent effect, then wouldn't the Chamber of Commerce around the world sell it like crazy? Which son of *TCH is bragging will have his entire family die? Tang Yuan felt insulted. Raising his fingers, he made an oath, his fat face becoming red. Sell it like crazy? Did you think that this is something that can be found everywhere? If this was not an extremely rare item, would my grandfather become so angry? I am a real son of *TCH. To think I would complain about this to you, son of *TCH. I have really found the wrong son of *TCH to complain to. Fatty Tang became agitated and began uttering his catchphrase, son of *TCH, with wanton abandon. Oh. I truly feel sympathy for your mother. Jun Xie gave out a long oh. In his mind, he was considering what to do. If this was truly such a heavenly defying treasure, then he really should not return it to the Tang family. This treasure would be of much better use if he were to use it to increase the strength of his own family, creating a super-level expert. That would certainly be much better than letting it go to waste in the hands of the Tang family. Tang Yuan, whose eyes were currently both red, grinned. He felt that in these past few days, Jun Xie was the only one who was willing to hear him out. This caused him to feel moved, suddenly causing some nasal mucus to rise. He easily bounced it off before turning back to face Jun Xie and continue his heartfelt conversation. It was at this moment. Who was it? Which son of *TCH was carelessly bouncing off his snot? Get your son of *TCH ass out here. Watch as this senior exterminates your 9 kindred. A sharp, angry voice rang out loudly, bringing with it an unparalleled aura of violence and wickedness. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 47. Blood-shedding Snot. Jun Xie turned around to see a young man wearing blue silk robes standing upon the center of the stairs. His left arm was hugging a gorgeously dressed woman. The man's face was filled with rage as he urgently tried to wipe away a yellow lump on his right cheek. That yellow lump was none other than Tang Yuan's snot. Tang Yuan was seated with his back facing the stairs when he bounced his snot off to the ground. Under such circumstances, the snot should not have hit anyone, much less a person's face. Coincidentally though, the very moment when Tang Yuan was bouncing his snot was when the youngster and the woman were ascending the stairs. At that moment, the young man was preoccupied with kneading the woman's bosom as they ascended, their heads just emerging from the stairs. It was then that the mass of snot flew over. If not for the fact that they had their faces turned to the side, it may have directly entered his mouth. Jun Xie was dumbfounded as he stared with bulging eyes. After a moment, he laughed out loud while he clasped his hands as a gesture of respect for Tang Yuan. Fatty Tang, your accuracy is truly impressive. Respect. Tang Yuan, who was also dumbfounded, stayed speechless for a good while before laughing bitterly. How could this be about the impressiveness of my accuracy? This is simply this son of *TCH's heavenly defying luck. This argument from Tang Yuan was certainly on point. Amongst all the notorious young masters within Tiansheng City, Tang Yuan and Jun Xie knew most of them. This young man was expressing an overbearing attitude with a face full of arrogance, indicating that he was no ordinary person. And yet, neither Tang Yuan nor Jun Xie recognized him. This could only mean that this man was a nobody amongst the local debauchees. Not only did this nobody got his face hit by Snot, he had currently provoked Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan, the two most notorious debauchee in the capital. As such, his luck can truly be considered heavenly defying. As the two of them were speaking, the young man suddenly turned his attention towards them. Releasing the woman from his left hand, he marched over aggressively and roared at Tang Yuan with a twisted expression. You damned son of *TCH fatty. Are you looking for death? And you, flower boy. What are you laughing at? You son of *TCH? Jun Xie's face suddenly became dark and sinister. He had originally thought of advising Tang Yuan not to beat him to death. After all, the one at fault was still Tang Yuan. But after listening to those words, he slowly sat down. This person simply deserved to die. Tang Yuan was not a virtuous gentleman. In addition, this happened to be the most depressing moment of his life, and he was in dire need of a punching bag to relieve his stress. Once he heard those words, he flew into a rage. His fat spherical body blasted off like a volleyball that was kicked at full power as he slapped the youngster in the face. A palm as big as a bear's fell upon the youngster's cheek. The youngster had never expected that Tang Yuan, who was in the wrong, would actually attack him without uttering a single word. This type of bully was indeed very rare in this world. His body was weak and simply unable to avoid. All he could do was take it straight on, his body spinning twice before falling with his ass on the floor. Before him, stars flashed and his brain felt displaced. Then, his mouth was forced open as he spat out blood and 4 white teeth. With a ferocious face, Tang Yuan rushed forward. His near 400 gene, 241.9 kilograms body slammed down upon the poor **starred, landing one punch after another on the man's face. He cursed. Screw your granny. You dare to play victim when I am in a bad mood? Me bouncing off my snot on your face is a way of showing you respect. But you dare to curse me? If I don't beat you to death today, then I will be letting down your mother. You **starred. Each word was accompanied by a punch, each punch following a certain rhythm. The resulting sounds were similar to that of a pig being miserably slaughtered. A crack sound was heard as the poor **starred's leg was abruptly broken from the sheer weight of Tang Yuan's body. The youngster cried out miserably one more time, his body convulsing, his head tilted to the side before fainting. It was at this moment that the woman who came together with the youngster recovered from shock. A shrill high-pitched cry burst out, instantly rising in intensity. Stop crying! Tang Yuan shouted ferociously, his eyes staring at her viciously. The woman stopped in shock. She grasped her neck with a face filled with fear before running down the stairs. A huge bang was heard, followed by a wretched cry and a tumbling sound. Apparently, the woman had lost her balance while running down the stairs and ended up tumbling down. That is enough. Since you have already vented your anger, just leave him be. If you continue beating him, he will really die. Jun Xie frowned, as he began to feel tired from today's outing. So what if I really kill him? Trouble? Who dares give this senior trouble? Tang Yuan gave the man 2 more vicious punches before standing up. He panted as he did so. Punching people was something that required effort after all. Tang Yuan was obviously quite tired as his eyes squinted. In this whole capital, there are really not many people that Tang Yuan cannot kill. This B***starred seems to have some background. Jun Xie indicated towards the outside with his chin. Outside, urgent footsteps could be heard as no small amount of people rushed towards them. Tang Yuan dismissed it with curled lips. He is someone that neither you nor me recognizes. What kind of background could he have? Just a bunch of damaged goods. Even if his ancestor were to come, this young master will use my one finger to push him back home. The 2 wicked people are upstairs. Qin. Young Master Qin is also up there. The panicked voice of the woman was heard from below. Following that, the sounds of swords being drawn out from their sheaths were heard. The sound of iron was heard as the sound of footsteps on the stairs came. In an instant, roughly 6 warriors with cold looks on their faces came to stand before the 2 of them. Noticing the young man covered with blood sprawled on the floor, their faces became furious. One of them bore some resemblance to the youngster. His face squarish, sporting a beard. He roared angrily as his eyes seemingly discharged waves of fire. What are you doing just standing there? Help the young master up and deal with these 2 audacious beasts. 4 of the warriors acknowledged the order. They stepped forward, ready to act. Beside them stood several men wearing officer uniforms. They laughed as they asked, "Clan leader Qin, do you want to let us handle this matter?" "We will certainly." "What nonsense. My son has already been beaten to such a sorry state, and yet you want me to hand this over to you? Today, I will be taking these 2 B***stards with me. Not a single one of them will be let off the hook. I am curious to know, which B***star dares to touch my Qin Hu's son? Especially in this drunken immortal establishment located in the northern area of the city." The man was greatly furious. The 2 officers originally wanted to ingratiate themselves up to him, but instead ending up provoking him. They felt embarrassed and became silent. The person who was furiously clamoring on about revenge was the clan leader of the Northern City Clan, one of the 6 great clans within Tianxiang City. As for the youngster lying on the ground, he was none other than the only son of Qin Hu, Qin Xiaobao, a debauchee with quite the considerable background. "Your son is untouchable?" Jun Xie stared at him with cold eyes as he watched Qin Hu express himself in such a domineering manner. "Then what if your son tries to touch us? Are you saying that the common people, like us, can only be bullied by your precious son?" Qin Xiaobao could certainly be considered as a debauchee with a considerable background. But that would depend on who was being compared with him. And today would be a calamitous day for him. For the 2-person he had bumped into just happened to be the 2 debauchee with the biggest backing in the city. In addition, one of them happened to be in dire need of venting his wrath. Qin Xiaobao's current situation was tantamount to a little rabbit showing off before a tiger and a wolf. This truly was a case of heaven toying with the will of men. "Ha ha ha, who dares touch my Qin Hu's son? Whoever dares, I will destroy his entire clan." When he heard Jun Xie claiming to be common people, Qin Hu's heart became set as he viciously stared at him. "Little flower boy, for you 2 to beat up my son until he is in such a sorry state, it seems like you have a death wish." Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 48. Hit. Tang Yuan's fury rose to the skies and was about to jump up and shout out his name, However, Jun Xie restrained him with a hand. If the two of them were to personally step forward, then the reputation of these two young masters would suffer. After all, Tang Yuan was the one who was at fault in the first place. If Qin Xiaobao had not cursed in such a vicious manner, then this whole matter would have been over with just a few words. However, after listening to Qin Hu's words, Jun Xie's killing intent was lit. Jun Xie's manner of conduct has never been about considering right or wrong. He would act on his own whim, deciding if someone was an ally or enemy in a heartbeat. After hearing Qin Hu's words, Jun Xie had resolved to not show any mercy to the Northern City clan. Like father, like son. Who knows how many people would suffer under these men? Considering how both father and son were *****, Jun Xie believed that killing them would be an act of helping heaven dispense justice, one that would earn great merit. The leader of the Tang family's bodyguards stood up. The other three men behind him followed suit, as their bodies all exuded a silver radiance. The four silver-leveled Xian Qi experts stepped forward in tandem, their gaze akin to a sword. What kind of person is this Qin Hu? Qin Hu was momentarily shocked as he felt a powerful pressure converging upon him. His mind started thinking, his body channeling Xian Qi, causing his body to glow with a golden radiance. He then retracted his arrogant demeanor and cautiously replied, "I am Qin Hu, the clan leader of the Northern City clan. May I ask who might you be?" A gold-leveled Xian Qi expert. As the master of a clan, Qin Hu was certainly no ordinary person. However, this gold-leveled Xian Qi expert's heart was currently thumping rapidly, having witnessed the strength of the opposing side. The clan leader of the Northern City clan immediately changed his attitude. Naturally, he would not view those silver-leveled Xian Qi experts highly. But the problem lied in the fact that these two brats actually having four silver-leveled experts as bodyguards. What could this mean? What kind of backing do these two have? Could it be that his son had once again provoked someone that he should not? A gold-leveled expert was indeed qualified to become a clan leader. Within the city, Qin Hu was considered to be quite the influential individual. However, the number of people that Qin Hu cannot afford to provoke remained substantial. Qin Hu recalled that not too long ago, his son had provoked a very handsome-looking young master by molesting a beautiful maid of the young master. Back then, the young master did not retaliate in any way. However, after night fell, all the senior members of the Northern City clan were captured. They were then transported into a secret location. As for Qin Hu, his Xian Qi cultivation, which was at the peak of the gold level, ended up falling down one stage to the mid-stage of the gold level after being constantly beaten by them. His son, Qin Xiaobao, on the other hand, had his dantian broken and could no longer cultivate Xian Qi. After 3 days and 3 nights, they were finally released. But the price of their freedom was to become the pawns of that young master. Even though he still does not know the identity of that person, Qin Hu knew that he was definitely a young master from one of the great families with sky-shaking authority. In the face of the influential nobles of the royal court, not even the average Earth Xian ranked expert could afford to provoke them. What more a mere gold-leveled Xian Qi expert? Currently, the one standing before him had a posture which suggested that he was even more powerful than the mysterious young master. In addition, the flower boy seemed even more handsome compared to the mysterious young master. Could it be that both of them were those kinds of existences? Clan leader of the Northern City clan? Qin Hu? I have never heard of you before. Where did you come from? You trash. To think that you would dare act presumptuously here. Who am I? Someone like you would never have the qualifications to know But today your son actually dared to offend our eldest young master Tang. An unforgivable sin. But our young master is a man of expansive and generous heart. After merely giving your son a light punishment, he decided to let your son off. As a father, not only should you feel grateful, you should have taken this opportunity to discipline your son. Instead, you brought your men to pin the blame on others. In addition, you also colluded with officials to capture these two young masters. Qin Hu, it seems you have quite a pair on you. The leader of the bodyguards stared at Qin Hu as he said in a slow, deep voice. Great articulation. Jun Xie secretly applauded. With just a few sentences, this bodyguard leader had thrown all the crimes onto Qin Xiaobao, giving no room for Qin Hu to refute. But that was not all. The highlight of his words were the part where he gave Fatty Tang's reputation a high-class landscaping. Just by considering his skill in blowing hot air, this man was certainly a talent. An absolutely great talent. The eldest young master of the Tang family? Hearing those words, Qin Hu was nearly shocked to death. The one family he feared most at the current was none other than the Tang family. The reason was simple. A guilty conscience. Even though the mysterious young master was terrifying, ignorance is bliss. Qin Hu naturally feared the mysterious young master. But he did not know the identity or the extent of the mysterious young master's background. But the Tang family was a different matter. The Tang family was a renowned name in the whole city. For the Tang family to destroy his tiny, little northern city clan would be no different from child's play. Not to mention, he had previously followed the instructions of the mysterious young master to steal the Xian core from the Tang family. As of now, the situation remained dire. Every day, he dreaded that the Tang family would appear before his doorstep, bringing the destruction of his northern city clan with it. Who could have guessed that his own son would end up provoking the eldest young master of the Tang family at this critical moment? What a self-defeating move. How was he supposed to live through this? At this moment, Qin Hu felt that he was about to faint. When faced against such dangerous people, one would normally hide themselves in a hurry. And yet his son actually ended up offending them. Even if you want to commit suicide, do you have to commit suicide in such a manner? Normal people would turn back after hitting into a brick wall. But why did his own son not turn away even after hitting a brick wall? Looking at his son who was sprawled on the floor, blood splattered all over his body after being lightly punished by the eldest young master Tang, Qin Hu felt anger, worry, and heartache. His northern city clan may not be a lightweight powerhouse, but when compared to the highly influential Tang family, it was no different from an ant compared to a tiger. This only son of his was simply too spoiled. Back then, he ended up losing his Xian Qi cultivation due to the trouble he caused, losing half his life in the process. And yet, he did not keep that lesson in mind. It seemed that his life might well be forfeit this time around. However, the ones who were feeling dreadful were not only Qin Hu, but also those 4 officers. They had originally intended to help Master Qin relieve his anger and in the process earn a small fortune. How could they have guessed that the person would be young Master Tang? This was no longer a monetary problem, but a life and death problem. As for you scums of the government, you will all stay here for now and wait for your superior to come. I want to question them. Is this how the men from the Ministry of Justice conduct themselves? Complying with the wishes of the underground gangs and oppressing the weak, common people, becoming a jackal for tigers? A servant of injustice. Tang Yuan gave the few officers with a deep, sinister stare. Each and every one of his words were morally just and righteous. However, these words should not have come out from Tang Yuan's mouth. It should have been directed at Tang Yuan instead. Jun Xie, who was listening by the side, felt tempted to burst out in laughter. Fatty Tang sure had guts to call himself a weak, common people. The four officers' face became deathly pale as they turned to look at one another, their bodies swaying weakly as though it was about to fall. If Tang Yuan had shouted slightly louder, then these men would have been scared to death. Tang Yuan's father-in-law-to-be, Sun Chenghe, was the vice minister of the Ministry of Justice, the one in charge of them all. Their superior was a subordinate of Sun Chenghe. If their superior came and saw that they had colluded with the Northern City clan to deal with the son-in-law of the one above them, just how much trouble would arise? When that happened, these 4B stards were as good as dead. These four officers were truly unfortunate. They had naturally heard of the eldest young Master Tang, but their positions were too low and were not able to meet him in person. As an exalted individual, Tang Yuan was someone whom they have only heard of. Today, however, was the day they found themselves slammed with his identity. It turns out that this person is the eldest young Master Tang. Please accept my apology. Qin, who instantly shifted his facial expression into one of flattering smile. He clasped his hands together courteously as he saluted. This lowly one has eyes but failed to see. I have offended young Master Tang. I had even troubled young Master Tang to help in disciplining my son. This lowly one is deeply grateful and hopes that the immeasurably generous senior young Master Tang could show leniency. Tang Yuan held his nose up high and snorted, ignoring Qin Hu. He turned to face the four bodyguards and said, "This brat was being rough with me for no reason. There must a story behind it. I now suspect that there is a relation between the Northern City clan and the robbery case of my Tang residence. Bring this brat together and interrogate him properly." The four bodyguards acknowledged the order in unison, but their faces showed a pained expression. They thought to themselves, this matter was originally your fault to begin with. You bounced off your snot onto someone else's face, and then you beat that person to the point of death. Now his father had already apologized to you in such a humble manner, but instead you decide to accuse others of being a thief. This is just too much. These words were simply the result of Tang Yuan's vexed emotions, a way for him to vent his fury. He simply accused Qin Xiaobao of whatever he could think of. After all, Qin Xiaobao had offended him during the worst possible time. How would Tang Yuan just let him off the hook? How could Tang Yuan have known that this nonsensical accusation of his was just like a cat running into a dead mouse? Without any form of cunning or skill, he had actually caught the thief. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 49. Extortion. Hearing Tang Yuan's words, Qin Hu felt as though his soul was suddenly shattered, cold sweat breaking out through his body. Oh, my God. This situation was just akin to bumping into a ghost in the middle of the night. Anyone could see that Tang Yuan was blindly accusing, and yet his accusations had actually hit the bull's eye. What an extremely messed up son of a b*tch. If his son somehow let out anything he should not, the amount of smart people within the Tang family was not to be underestimated. Jun Xie was grinning sinisterly as he sat on the side. However, when Jun Xie saw Qin Hu's face turning pale, his eyes glancing evasively, Jun Xie felt surprised. Those words from Fatty Tang was simply his way to getting more in terms of reputation and benefits. Was there a need for Qin Hu to panic until such a degree? No matter how you cut it, Qin Hu was still a clan leader. Even though the Northern City clan was presently the weakest amongst the 6 great clans, surely Qin Hu had no need to be so fearful. In fact, depending on how Qin Hu dealt with this situation, he could actually use this opportunity to ingratiate himself with the Tang family, turning this into a great blessing. And yet, his current expression was one filled with guilt. Why so? Wait. Guilt? Thinking about that, Jun Xie's gaze towards Qin Hu changed, becoming more meaningful, his mind clicking into place. This lowly one's son was being rude. It is only fitting that he be disciplined. But, may I request the permission to first bring him back to treat his wounds before sending him to eldest young master's residence for disciplinary action? Naturally, since this lowly one's son had caused eldest young master a fright, I will definitely compensate you to your satisfaction. Even though he had been rendered fearful after what happened last time. As a clan leader with years of experience, Qin Hu was able to immediately recover. He proposed a compromising stance with a smile on his face. Tang Yuan gave out a hang and said, I would like to see just how you Northern City clan plan to compensate me. This sentence of his signified that he no longer wished to pursue this matter. Now that Fatty Tang has managed to keep his face, all he wanted was benefits. As an experienced man, Qin Hu naturally understood Tang Yuan's intentions and replied in a grateful voice. I thank the great eldest young master for your mercy. I will certainly visit to thank eldest young master for your great kindness. Tang Yuan gave a light N and turned towards Jun Xie. I no longer have a problem with you, but your son had earlier cursed third young master Jun here. As long as third young master Jun is willing, then you are free to go. Third young master Jun? Qin Hu suddenly recalled this name. In the entire city, the infamous Jun Moxie was the only one whom Tang Yuan would address as third young master Jun. Not only did his son offend the eldest young master Tang, he also cursed the even more terrifying third young master Jun. At this moment, Qin Hu was almost overwhelmed with an impulse to strangle his own son. If only Qin Xiaobao was not his only heir. Jun Xie looked at Qin Hu. His eyes flashed for a moment before fading instantly. His mind made up. Qin Hu and his son Qin Xiaobao were both rude, overbearing and arrogant in shielding their own mistakes. Jun Xie could only imagine how many sins these two have committed. Today, if Qin Xiaobao had not met Jun Xie and Tang Yuan and had instead met an ordinary person, would that person still be alive? Qin Hu, Qin Xiaobao, facing such scums of society, letting them live would cause Jun Xie discomfort. Allowing Northern City clan to survive would also cause Jun Xie discomfort. Jun Xie's killing intent had been provoked. But he was hesitant. Mainly because he could feel that someone was secretly observing him in this building, noting his every move. He leaned back lazily upon the chair and lifted both his legs by force of habit. He pointed at Qin Hu's head with his finger. Qin Hu, after hearing your words earlier, I had originally intended to teach you a lesson. But seeing you show such a respect, I have decided to forget about it. I heard that your Northern City clan had opened no small number of casinos. I also hear that the Northern City clan is rolling in mountains of gold and silver every day. Hee, truly prosperous. Staring at Qin Hu, Jun Xie let out two cold sneers. Qin Hu, this young master shall observe how you handle your affairs. If you dare make me dissatisfied, then this young master can assure you that no one in your Northern City clan, regardless of age or gender, could live to see tomorrow's rising sun. Having said that, Jun Xie bent his body. He approached Qin Hu's ears and smiled in a peculiar manner. However, if you can satisfy me, then you will get to enjoy some benefits. Ha ha ha. You might as well just say cough out as much money as you can. Was there any need to beat around the bush in such a long-winded manner? Qin Hu inwardly cursed. but was unable to do anything as the opposing side's influence was stronger than his. As a clan leader, he had to endure being abused by a young teenager. How humiliating! Nonetheless, Qin who dared not show the slightest hint of unhappiness. This was because it really would not take much for Jun Xie to exterminate the Northern City clan. Wearing a smile on his face, Qin who promised that he would satisfy third young master Jun. After having exhausted all his flattering words, Jun Xie waved him off, allowing him to pick up his son and leave in a disheartened manner. Pooh! What a mood breaker! Tang Yuan fiercely spat out as he watched Qin who's leaving back. Third young master, the gifted scholars' feast will be held tomorrow evening in the center island of Moondrop Lake. Are you going? I heard that there will be a lot of new stuff. Traditionally, Tianqiang Kingdom will hold a gifted scholars' feast during the annual autumn festival. This feast would be held during the evening in the center island of Moondrop Lake. The emperor would take this opportunity to have his ministers arrange for the first 10 gifted scholars from the Wenqing Institute of Knowledge to appear. These 10 individuals were in fact the few handsome talents that were about to graduate and serve the royal court. Using this feast, their talents would be judged before being assigned to the appropriate positions. As such, this gifted scholars' autumn festival feast was no different from a platform for them to soar into the Dragon's Gate. A mere 10 places were certainly not enough for the thousands of scholars. This situation would cause an intense competition to arise among the scholars of Wenqing Institute of Knowledge. This situation would also become the main focus of the masses. Even the great families would assign some men to attempt to approach these men into serving their family. In addition, these gifted scholars were mostly bachelors with a very promising future. Thus, some young ladies from various noble families would desire to select their future husbands from amongst them. Naturally, many others would choose to join in as well. With so many ladies from the noble families there, it was only natural for the debauchees like Tang Yuan and Jun Moxie to appear. In order to garner the attention of the beauties, they would end up competing with the gifted scholars in a battle of wit. However, each of these competitions would end with the debauchee side losing miserably. Such was the scenario each year. At the current, Tang Yuan asked with a look of excitement on his whole fat body. He obviously felt that this was an important matter. But whether they would be able to win was not something they dared to declare. The only thing that could be said was that it does not look optimistic. Gifted Scholars Feast. Eldest young Master Tang. Just look at the two of us. Do we look like gifted scholars? Jun Xie rolled his eyes. It would be more accurate to call us rape seeds. In his heart, Jun Xie had to restrain himself from saying, with my delicate features, it may not be too far-fetched to be labeled a gifted scholar. But you, my dear brother, even calling you a rapeseed is inappropriate. For you, it would be more fitting to call you a fat seed. Nonsense. What gifted scholars? They are just a bunch of pedantic men bent on making profit. Do you remember that Zhao Qingsong who caused me to lose face in front of Miss Li in last year's Gifted Scholars Autumn Festival Feast? He was that one person who kept throwing various insults around. I immediately arranged for him to be employed by our Tang family. All I needed to do was promise him a high position and big salary for him to run over. Do you know which department he is in now? Tang Yuan said in a triumphant manner. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 50. I am a bad guy. Which department? Jun Xie was very interested in this type of matter. Accessing his memories, he recalled that this Zhao Qingsong's family circumstances was only average. Even though he does possess the talent for learning, he was a power-hungry person. Externally, He gave off the portrayal of a lofty gentleman, but was in fact a subservient garbage. Back then, both him and Tang Yuan competed against one another for the sake of winning the favor of the young lady from Grand Preceptor Li's family. At the end of the day, none of the noble ladies took a fancy to him. How was it that Tang Yuan would suddenly become so generous as to accept this kind of person in? This action simply does not match that of Tang Yuan's character. I first had him placed into the Ministry of State Revenue, then had my uncle find faults with him and had him transferred. After having him transferred several times, his only duty is to rub my back every time I take a bath, and wash my underwear and socks every day. The clothes of my lesser concubines are also his responsibility. Besides that, he has no other duties. Tang Yuan laughed viciously. If he had remained stubborn and quiet until the end, then I really would have no interest or reason to continue tormenting him. But this spineless guy actually tried to act high and mighty in front of me, saying things like, "Scholar with distinguished and admirable reputation." Who? That son of a b*tch. Since he wanted to tear out the skirts of Grand Preceptor Li's residence, I will just let him wash skirts every day. Tang Yuan's uncle was the outer minister for the Ministry of State Revenue. Something like demoting a new person was naturally an easy thing for him to do. Pfft. Jun Xie spat out a mouthful of tea onto Tang Yuan's face and coughed. Your uncle sure could listen to you. Eldest young Master Tang. Don't you think this action of yours is too demeaning? No matter how you cut it, he is still a gifted scholar, and a graduate of Wenqing Institute of Knowledge to boot. A person with some capabilities. This kind of action is simply too insulting. Too insulting? Third young master. I cannot agree with these words of yours. What type of qualifications do those people have? They are nothing more than a bunch of bookworms. So what if they manage to learn the heavenly way of bringing peace and prosperity to the country from their books? They only know how to debate about it on paper, but have no desire to utilize it, causing that knowledge to rot within them. Having a great deal of knowledge does not equate having a great deal of ability. Most importantly, it does not equate having a great character. With just a glib mouth, how can one be considered a talent? These men have no significance at all. Wenqing Institute of Knowledge? What an exaggerated reputation. In the long history of Tianqiang Kingdom, how many famed individuals hailed from the Wenqing Institute of Knowledge? Who? Tang Yuan let out a small laugh and patted Jun Xie on the shoulder. Third young master. Neither of us can be considered good materials. Hold it. What do you mean, neither of us can be considered good materials? Listening to Tang Yuan, Jun Xie had originally agreed with him again and again, secretly applauding. He deeply agreed with this perspective. When those students who graduated with top scores from the examination-oriented education entered the workforce, which had withstood the test of time, they would amount to nothing, as their knowledge and eloquence would be of not much use. They would be no different from a newly weaned baby, similar in all aspect. Unexpectedly, Tang Yuan actually possessed such a kind of perspective. As Jun Xie was feeling refreshed from hearing those words, Tang Yuan unexpectedly changed the subject, causing him to feel shocked. The difference between those two subjects were as vast as the difference between heaven and earth, north and south. This difference was simply too astonishing. Haha, what I meant was, neither one of us are good men. Tang Yuan laughed out. However, third young master, no matter how wicked we may be, even if we are to go out and do harm every day, how many people in this vast city can we harm? 1,000 people would already be considered an accomplished number, don't you think? However, look at Zhao Qingsong. A spineless b** starred with nothing but rot festering within him. If someone like him were to be appointed as an official, then one wicked action from him is enough to cause harm to countless commoners. Not to mention, after causing a calamity for the people here, he would just move to another place and repeat his actions. As long as the royal court does not decapitate him, he would continue causing harm to others. By the time he gets decapitated, how many people would have suffered under him? If we are to compare him with the two of us combined, which one is the true evil? Tang Yuan suddenly became resentful after saying all that. That is why this senior would choose to disgrace those shameless things. What gifted scholars? A bunch of sons of cheese. At any rate, anyone who dares to claim to be a gifted scholar in front of this senior will be flattened to their death. As long as these hypocritical gifted scholars fall into my hands, they can forget about squirming their way out. Jun Xie laughed loudly. Well said, Fatty Tang. This is the first time this senior heard you say something that could satisfy me to this extent. Well said indeed. Just by what you have said earlier, I shall toast this cup to you. This toast was one Jun Xie had given truthfully from the bottom of his heart. Tang Yuan's words just now have won over Jun Xie's heart. For Jun Xie, who had transmigrated over, a man of two worlds, the number of people that qualify for Jun Xie's toast were probably no more than 3. For Tang Yuan to be able to receive this toast from Jun Xie showed how much fortune he has. Tang Yuan was the first person to receive a toast from Jun Xie in this world. After having drunk down this cup, it meant that Jun Xie had already approved of Tang Yuan. Even though he was a debauchee, he was a true villain with a true character. Jun Xie had always acted on his whims. Even if everyone condemned someone he favored, he would still drink together with that person. Even if everyone applauded someone he disliked as a saint, he would still ignore that person. At this moment, Fatty Tang has no understanding towards the extent of value that this cup of wine contained. Naturally, he would never have predicted that due to this cup of wine, he would be able to survive from several calamities. He would be saved from situations of life and death by Jun Xie. However, that story would come later. Tang Yuan gulped down the cup of wine in one go, his small eyes gazing around. I know what kind of person I am. I do not have good looks. I like to gamble. I like to fight. Bullying people makes me feel good. When I see beautiful ladies, I must say some flowery words to relieve my boredom. I have a bad heart, but I also have the courage to be bad. I am a bad guy, but I am one who does bad things in broad daylight. As the saying goes, when a lady is beautiful, everyone would turn their heads. If a woman is beautiful, everyone would want to look at her longer. If you do not let us look at you, then is there any bloody reason to you being born beautiful? If some beautiful lady from some bloody good family notices me looking at them like this, they would surely run away and hide. On the other hand, I too will have no interest in pursuing a dead end. But those who choose to continue standing there to tempt me even after seeing the way I look at them, can they be considered good? And yet, they actually dared to tell others that I am a detestable, unforgivable baddie. Look at those hypocrites. When they see a beautiful lady, they would quickly lower their heads to bow, showing a look of virtue and piousness. But after the lady turned away, they would quickly raise their heads to stare at that lady's big ass while salivating, secretly desiring fleshly pleasures. Pooh! That is a gifted scholar for you. A gifted scholar with cock for brains. With such a kind of gifted scholar, I yearn for the day I can eradicate them all. After having vented his opinions, Fatty Tang became depressed, pouring one cup of wine after another, gulping each one down without reserve. His hands never stopped moving as he consumed more wine. Even though the wine was light and weak in strength, The amount of consumption and his feelings of sadness eventually caused him to become drunk. His eyes became vacant as his head swayed back and forth. Eventually unable to hold on and falling face first into the hot bowl of fish soup. He wailed and woke up with a start. Jun Xie looked at Tang Yuan, who had fish soup dripping awkwardly from his face, and made up his mind. Since I have decided to have Qin Hu and his son dealt with, I might as well hand this matter over to the Tang family. Considering how desperate grandfather Tang must be after losing his precious treasure, he would rather kill 1,000 innocents than let off one criminal. Not to mention my current state of strength is still lacking and the men I am training still cannot be sent out. If Grandpa were to come out to do it, it would cause a big ruckus. Very well. I will go with this way. This is the only way to successfully resolve this important matter. Pooh. Getting rid of a bunch of garbage cannot even be considered an important matter. Jun Xie did not want to mobilize the Jun family forces for one reason: Xian Corps. The Xian Corps was a terrifyingly vast whirlpool of problems. Even though Qin Hu's expression was not enough to guarantee that he was connected to the theft of the Xian Corps, should it ever happen that he was connected to the theft, the Jun family's actions of exterminating Northern City Clan would be tantamount to admitting their guilt in this matter. They would end up with a foot in a huge pit of mud for all to see. The Tang family, on the other hand, have no such concerns. Fatty Tang, since we have eaten our fill, what do you say we get a change in scenery? I feel that the Red Joy establishment is quite clean and quiet. What do you think? Jun Xie was obviously intending to do something evil, but instead put on a pious appearance. Red Joy establishment? That is certainly a clean and quiet place. A very, very good place. Ahaha. Tang Yuan's eyes brightened and he emerged from his drunken stupor, his face twisting with desire. Ha ha ha. Third young master, you are a true friend. Come, come, come. Let's head there immediately. It just so happened that these few days have caused me no small amount of frustration. I am truly in need of some clean and quiet place. He impatiently stood up, his belly falling all the way down to his thigh. Jun Xie observed Tang Yuan with a straight face and wondered inwardly. He was having a hard time imagining how he intended on proceeding after entering the Red Joy establishment. Could it be that he would use both hands to prop up his belly? But if he does not, it would be really hard to proceed. What a headache. This story will be continued to chapter 51. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.